You had you mentioned earlier that SC6 was kind of pitched to you as personality driven sports center. At what point when you during your tenure anchoring that show and hosting that show with Michael Smith did you realize that ESPN did not actually want a personality driven sports center?
Oh, well, I'll say this, because that question almost deserves two answers. I knew before we ever had our first show that we were not in a good place.
Okay.
Um, and the reason is because I didn't feel like we had enough time to figure out what the show was. I mean, His and Hers ended in late December, uh, if I'm not mistaken. And then we wound up doing a special His and Hers in January, to support um, the college football playoff, I think. And so we had maybe 4 or 5 rehearsals, before we had, and then we went on this monstrous publicity campaign that ate up a lot of time. So when it came time to actually work on the show, we had very little time. And I know that they were trying to take advantage of the window after the Super Bowl, because usually those tend to be the highest rated shows
Yeah.
across the network. And they wanted us to debut then, and they were insistent about it. I personally preferred a fall debut around NFL season, because I thought we needed that much time to work. And looking at how SVP, he got a long time to work on his show. Get Up got a long time to work on that show. I was like, I don't feel good about this. So from the start, as much as everybody was on the same page about making the show a success, about it being personality driven, we hadn't figured out how that could work in the universe of traditional Sports Center. And so a lot of the tinkering and the changing and the formatting, all that happened in real time. And that was not good for the show, particularly since we had a whole ad campaign that falsely led people to believe that the show was not about sports. I think that was a huge mistake. It was an ad campaign Mike and I really weren't thrilled about. But we did it because we wanted to be good soldiers, and we kind of trusted them and thinking like, well, they've been doing sports center a long time. This is really our first experience, so they probably know what they're talking about. And in hindsight, that was not a good idea. So there was that part. And then, Norby sort of took over maybe 5 or 6 months that we were into it. And he wanted to go back to traditional Sports Center. And so all the personality elements that they said they wanted were removed. And so even, our screen time together, it was removed. And so um we were in two separate parts of the studio, doing our reads and interviews. And so, like, the thing that people loved about us, which was our chemistry with each other, they sort of sucked out of the show. And so it was, we were under two different regimes at two different times. And in both cases, we were not on the same page.
Whose idea was that ad campaign?
It was actually Skipper's idea, because I know the original. I remember the original concept that that marketing came up with. Um, he thought it was too tame, actually, and I'm trying to remember what it was, but he wasn't a fan, and he was like, "No, it needs to be more," And then next thing you know, I'm dressing up like James Harden and Cleopatra Jones, and and the campaign, I believe the slogan, it was like movies, music, and more. But we're talking about Sports Center. We weren't giving music reviews. We weren't giving movie reviews. Like, so I think I get it. It came from a good place, because when we were on His and Hers, we did the skits. All those went viral. They were very well liked around the company and certainly outside. Like, people love the cultural elements, and they were just trying to play that up, right? But at the end of the day, people have a different expectation for the 6 o'clock Sports Center. I
Yeah.
mean, it's one of the most difficult time slots you have, because it's after sports has been baking overnight and has been talked about all day, and then you haven't played the games yet for the night to come. So you're stuck in like this universe of, have they already seen this, and we have to also tell them what they're about to see. And so I just don't think we thought about the repercussions, of that. And it planted in everybody's mind that our show wasn't about sports. And even now, when people are like, oh, your show, it was never about sports. It was too political. We did not do one political topic on that show. We didn't. I mean, they must have brought us the Colin Kaepernick topic. Every time another quarterback got signed, they wanted us to do it. And we were like, nope, nope. And not because we were afraid to do it. We're just like, we're past that in terms
Right.
of not his situation, but it's like, why? And I'm not gonna lie, part of us wondered, like, do y'all go to White House and ask them to talk about Colin Kaepernick all the time? I'm being real. Like, because why are you continually asking us to talk about Colin Kaepernick? Like, certainly we both supported his protests, and we had done many topics when we were on His It Nerves about Colin Kaepernick, but it just felt like, why are y'all doing this? And then, there were some things that happened on the show that didn't have anything to do with us. Like, I remember the whole nickname of Woke Center came about because of something one of our guests wore. We didn't have anything to do with that. Like, we didn't tell her what to wear, and it's not our job to do that, because the wonderful director, Gina Prince Bythewood, wore a shirt that said feminist while we did an interview with her and Sanaa Lathan to talk about the anniversary of Love and Basketball. And she had a new series that was coming out that we asked her about, that was about a cop shooting a unarmed person. But, the flip was the cop was black, and I think the person they shot was white, and the reverberations from that. But they started attaching labels to our show that
Yeah.
really were just because we were two Black people on TV, and
Right.
not based off the actual content.
Yeah, definitely. You were not doing 60 minutes of cable news every single
No.
night there. Is that a narrative that you were trying to push back on? Is it a narrative that you can push back on, or like once the show is deemed political, is there not really a way to
It
fight
wasn't
it?
really a way that we could really fight against it. Now, granted, and that was, something that I think upset us, that we internally definitely brought to their attention. Like, these narratives are killing us. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing to combat this? Is there something to be done? And they just kind of made it seem like it wasn't a big deal. Like, oh, but they didn't hear what we were hearing. I
Right.
don't think they really were as close to it. And maybe, yeah, you could argue that we were being more sensitive about it because it's our names on the show. It's our faces every night that people are seeing. And we didn't enjoy that. Like, and I wish, looking back on it now, I wish that I would have personally maybe fought much harder to get them to do something more actionable to help really destroy that narrative that our show was not about sports. That any discussion that took place that was not strictly results and games and championships was probably something that was definitely in the news. Like, we weren't veering off, very much. I mean, one time that we did veer off, like, when the layoffs happened at ESPN, and because so many of our friends were part of those layoffs and people we really respected, we we talked about it on air, and which they knew we were going to do. Our mistake was we talked about it too long. I'm not gonna lie, we did that. And something Skipper had a discussion with us about, for sure. And he was right. And but other than that, I mean, that's the only time I really remember us, like, going way beyond any kind of sports discussion. So, but yeah, I wish those narratives had been erased sooner, or tried to. But, like, during that time, it wasn't just our show, but it was the fact that, between us and Lebertard, like, as the faces of ESPN start to change, the network itself was under attack by a lot of right-wing media outlets and right-wing pundits who saw ESPN as very low-hanging fruit. They made them polarizing. They sort of kind of, it seemed like they had it out for the network, since they decided to give the Arthur Ashe Award to Caitlyn Jenner, which I always find to be very fascinating, because Caitlyn Jenner is a huge conservative.
Yeah.
Well, look at that. You know what I'm saying? And so, but they use that as evidence that this network has lost its mind and is super woke and all this other dumb shit that they kept saying. And those narratives, ESPN, despite the fact that it's a big company, despite the fact that, it's been very dominant in its genre, it's still a sensitive company, very much so. And those kind of external criticisms do take root in the building. And I think they tried to overcorrect, because they were so sensitive to it. And I think that just made it worse. That just let the people who are loud and dumb know that they could have an impact.